Daddy likes the middle.
Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash. That's right. Dramatic pause, season 6. So we are now officially halfway through this season of The Flash, as we have just had episode 11 of this season air, and of course we now have episode 12 coming later on this week. Now there are 22 episodes this season, so that does put us halfway through. Half of 22 is 11. Hopefully you have enjoyed your weekly Maths with Pagey session. They're usually a lot of fun. But in this video, we are going to be going over some new information and details provided by the showrunner for The Flash, that of course being Eric Wallace, in an interview with our good old mates discussing film. Now, we won't be going through every single little thing here, as we'd be here for 42 minutes, the length of a Flash episode, but we'll go through some of it, or a decent chunk of it. And we will also go over some new stuff for this week's episode as well. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know all of your various opinions in the comment section down below. Which of this gets you interested? What different theories do you have from it? And trust me, there's a couple of things that'll make you go, ooh, that gets me excited. I can't wait. So be sure to let me know all of your various opinions in the comment section down below. And of course, if you enjoy the video, the stuff contained in it, and you're just excited for it and want to help support the channel, why not drop a like on it? It helps a lot and takes you 1, maybe 2 seconds, depending if your computer is a bit laggy. But we will actually go over that stuff for this week's episode first, before jumping into the interview with Eric Wallace. So Canada Grass, our favourite hucky puck eating and maple syrup drinking Canadian, was on set when they were filming this week's episode, back whenever that was. And of course, this episode is episode 12, and had a set report to give. It's short, it's sweet, but it does give us some new stuff. I will leave the link to the complete blog post in the description down below, as well as all the photos there if you want to go check it out. But here is what I wanted to point out from it. Now, Grant Gustin at one point was dressed in his Flash attire, as well as Hartley Sawyer as both Elongated Man and Ralph Dibny. Jesse L. Martin was there on set as Joe West as well, and along with them were Alexa Barajas, who was back as Ultraviolet, as well as newcomer to the show, and Natalie Dreyfus as Sue Dearborn. Sue was in Central City Police attire, so you would have to think that this would be her going undercover at some point in the episode as a cop. But it is interesting that Ultraviolet was there as well, as this does indicate there will be some black hole related activity going on, whether it means that maybe they're after Sue, or Sue's connected to something, or it's just an unfortunate coincidence that they meet. We'll have to wait and find out. But yeah, here is the interview with Eric Wallace. You can find the full interview in the link in the description at discussingfilm.net. So we saw Iris enter the mirror dimension. I was wondering how this affects her character in the second half of this season. Iris will grow in ways she didn't know she could, and I mean that emotionally. Being sucked into that mirror will push her to the edge and a little bit beyond. It will literally test her sanity, which is really great because it's giving Candace as a performer a wonderful opportunity to just give some of the greatest performances she's ever given on the show, in my opinion, and just knock it out of the park. One of the things that was important to me as a storyteller was we spent a lot of time with Barry's emotional state leading up to Crisis, while in graphic novel number 2, which is the second half of this long season, it's not necessarily all about Barry. We wanted to focus equally on Iris in the back half. And that's what getting sucked into that mirror, believe it or not, is going to allow us to do. Who knows what lies behind that mirror, but I guarantee you it's a different place. It's a place that will affect her in a way that she will have to examine who she is and what makes up Iris West Allen in all of its different facets, and if that's a good or bad thing. So firstly on this, a lot of people have been saying, oh, it's the Iris West show again. Iris has only been really the focus for 2 episodes, and I think she's definitely going to be a focus in this back half. But like, man, it's been 2 episodes and people are saying it's like the Iris West show again. Like, Barry's obviously still the main character. It's just that Iris will be our eyes and our avenue, if you want to say, into this whole mirror world, and I guess what lies beyond it and where it's going to lead into this back half as well. Like, don't get too emotional quickly, Flash fans, if you don't like Iris, because I think they're actually telling it in a very interesting way, and they're actually making Iris an interesting character. So I don't know if you can really complain that much, but I guess it just comes down to personal preference. Obviously, you mentioned Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it's still a huge discussion point with the multiverse reset allowing for a blank canvas per se. How has that experience been for a writer in terms of being able to introduce and change major parts of the show and kind of do whatever you want going forward? Liberating. That's the perfect description. The best thing that ever happened to the show was Crisis on Infinite Earths, the crossover and moving past the end of our pilot. Way back at the end of the pilot of season 1, we see that newspaper and it's telling us what we're driving towards. So in a sense, the first 6.5 seasons of this series have been driving towards a predetermined point, and that can be a little limiting from a story point of view, especially from a writing point of view. Now we fast forward to graphic novel 2, our 6.5 waypoint. Who knows what's going to happen happen now, and that's the fun part. We can take all the best of the past, keep it, but we can add in ways. I said to our writers in the writers' room, I said, who were the villains from the past, from previous seasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, whomever? We have the opportunity to tweak them now, just a little bit, and put on a fresh coat of paint. I use that term a lot now to describe our methodology, and you're going to see that with several villains from past seasons. You might also see that with some heroes too, maybe 1 or 2, who are from the past. And that's great. It's very liberating, very exciting. It keeps it fresh for us as writers. And I think when we're feeling the excitement for the freshness of the stories we're telling, hopefully that's translating into what you, the audience, sees. It feels like the best of all worlds. It feels like the show you know and love that feels familiar, but also maybe just has a new coat of paint. Specifically, it's painted with the new main title credits. That is something I planned from day one when I took over on the show. I said, when we get to post-crisis, it's a brand new world. What's the best way to visualize that for the audience and send them a literal message that says this is the line of demarcation between the previous seasons of the show and the show from the point on going forward? Well, it's just a card that comes up with some lightning that happens if we do 15 seconds of awesomeness, which the composer got excited about. Warner Brothers got excited about, and who did just a terrific bang-up job on the title for us. And now that is one reaction that might be one of the only times where I was actually curious as to what people thought, and thank goodness there seems to have been a real positive response to that. And I know this sounds kind of strange, but in a sense it's kind of the message that sort of opens the door for everything else. So I'm glad people are kind of seeing that. And they should look for more changes in the characters growing in ways we haven't seen them grow before, in the story this season in the back half, not just Iris' story, but Barry's story too, Killer Frost's. Everybody's kind of on a real wild journey that takes them to new places, and that's on purpose. There were no rules like there used to be, pre-crisis, for stories. So that leads perfectly into my next question, which is, what characters and locations can we expect to appear in the back half of the season that have changed or came about following Crisis? Oh, how do I answer that without spoiling anything? That's a good question. I got to think about that one because there is one set that goes to Crazy Town, but that's a spoiler. I cannot say that. Can you hint towards it at all? Or, no, it's so huge of a spoiler. I will say there's an episode where the West House, not the loft, but the house that Barry and Iris grew up in, there is a scene where that house undergoes a, shall we say, transformation of sorts that's really exciting. Our DP did something really special with that episode in general. The director did something special. It's actually quite a special episode. That's an example of how we can look at the same set and they're a little bit different. Other than that though, other than this one obvious way which I can't tell you about, it's because it's so spoilery, the sets don't really change. It's more the characters changing, the villains changing, the scenarios that happen being a little weirder. As an example of that I use at Comic-Con, I pitched out to the world that what season 6 was really all about. It was a season of thrills and chills. Well, part 1, graphic novel number 1, was the chills. Literally, we made a horror movie. Now in the new season, graphic novel number 2, the back half, this is the thrills section of the season. This is the section of the season that, and this is great because you're discussing film. I'm a film buff. I watched a whole bunch of 1970s paranoid thrillers to get in the mood to prepare for the back half. So that was a massive mouthful. You probably got a headache from God. I can't listen to Pagey for this long. Can he shut the hell up? So anyway, I would have been talking anyway. That was just a lot of talking. But as I said, that's a lot of talking. But it seems that Eric was just happy with post-crisis. It doesn't necessarily give them a complete blank canvas, but definitely gives them the all-magic eraser. And they can erase and sketch in little new things. Not erase the entire canvas, but if Ralph's wearing a hat, they can take that off, and hey, he's wearing one of those like little helicopter hats, one of those, the caps with a propeller on top. Change things around. Maybe he's wearing a baseball helmet. Little things like that. So I'm excited to see where they go forward, and I think Eric, as a big comic book fan, knows what he's doing and knows what changes need to happen, and I'm just excited to where it all goes, in the next, well, hopefully in the next handful of seasons. We know that Wally West is going to be returning this season, and it's obviously highly anticipated. We're wondering, what can you reveal about what his return will bring to this season? When Wally comes back, it's not the same old Wally. Being in Tibet will change you if you embrace the tenets of Tibet. He's going to come back a little older and a little wiser, and this is a spoiler I don't mind saying. He might just have a new ability or two, and that's part of the fun. Sometimes abilities don't have to be crazy and intense, sometimes they can just be darn fun. That's another thing that Keenan said to me when we were talking. I don't know, last week or the other week, I was chatting with him and I said, well, how are you feeling? And he just said, wow, this is the place I always wanted the character to go. I'm so happy with what we're doing here. It almost feels like I'm a rebirth a little bit. And that's exciting for him. And I literally think this is the best performance of Keenan on this show. I think when people see this episode, they're going to love it. There's specifically a truly great Barry and Kid Flash scene where they really get their act together in a way that I haven't been able to do since I think Keenan's first appearance on the show way back in season 2. So it was really kind of an honor to bring back that special magic between the two of them and explore how their relationship has been changed, because, you know, Kid Flash, his name might still be Kid Flash, but maybe he's a man now, maybe he's grown up a bit, and that's what's exciting. So look for that in that episode. I think it comes out in a really unique way, and I don't think the audience is quite going to see it coming because it works into the plot and the villain of the week, so it's really fun, but it does bode very well for, I think, the future of Kid Flash, and I'm very hopeful that this isn't the last time we see Kid Flash. I'm anxious to see what the audience thinks. I hope they enjoy it. We enjoyed writing it and making it. It's obvious that Keenan hasn't been happy with how Kid Flash and Wally has been treated, and I think he's just happy that Eric has come in and just done this. And I think I'm excited to see what they do, because us, the audience, know that Wally and Kid Flash have been mistreated, and we don't blame Keenan for just walking away and being like, oh, I can't be bothered coming back, because he came back and was always like the butt of the joke, did nothing, and hopefully Eric does it well. But by the sounds of this, and that if Keenan was happy to do it and he was happy with what was happening, then I think us, the audience, will be happy with it as well, and I'm intrigued to see what powers he might have. In episode 1, there was a slight feature of Godspeed, and we were wondering if we will see a payoff of that in this season. You've been mentioning old villains quite a lot. Is that what you're perhaps hinting to, or let's just say there will be more Godspeed coming? Who knows when or where, but it will come. So obviously the whole Godspeed thing has been a big talking point. We've talked about it. It doesn't seem like they just put it in episode 1 and mentioned that it's been happening previous to that and they're not paid off. Whether it's this season, that's for us to wait and find out. I have a feeling it'd be this season, because it'd be weird to introduce it right at the beginning of one season and they're not paid off in that season. So I'd expect it sometime this season, hopefully. And you never know, it could be connected to Black Hole. And finally, the final question is, will the Flash's gold boots from the comics ever make an appearance in the future? Yes, they will, eventually, but not this season. I too am a fan of the gold boots. Grant is a fan of the gold boots, but not this season. We will eventually get there. I would ask for patience. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that answer. I'm not expecting them to say, yeah, next episode we get them. The big issue with the gold boots is I can tell you this, and we've mentioned it in the past before, they've trialed the gold boots with costume fittings and they haven't been able to make it work. I think it's one of those things where there's like a small margin of perfection and making it actually look half decent, and they've tried it and it hasn't worked. I don't know how they're going to get there, but I've heard that they've tried it multiple times and just haven't been able to get there with the entire boot being golden. But I think they're getting there. I don't think Eric would say yes if they weren't going to get there, so let's hope for the best. The gold boots are potentially coming. But yeah, guys, hopefully this wasn't too long of a video. I tried to keep it as short as possible by cutting out some questions, but if you want to read that entire interview, it is at discussingfilm.net. The link to it is in the description down below. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, it would be awesome if you could drop a like and it shows support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions on what we went over. Any theories to come from this? Are you excited for Wally to come back and various things from this season? Let me know in the comments section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.